Welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield on the Rural Radio Network. And we talked about this last week about the headlines and how much we seem to grab a hold of them. Not us, but just the news in general. And we're going to talk a little bit about that with the latest news that's been moving, affected the cattle. But Moy, I tell you gotta love the way these markets finished out on a Thursday. As Brad and I are going to be talking, we're going to talk about the big jump we saw in the cash. We're going to talk about some troublesomes out there, though, as well, affecting this market trade. So a lot to unpack today. As I just mentioned, Brad Kooima joins us. He's with Kooima Kooima Varilek out of Sioux Center, Iowa. And what do you want to start with, the good, the bad, or the ugly, Brad?
Well, how about first, thanks for having me on, and thanks for having me on Thursday instead of Wednesday, right?
Yeah, no kidding. It worked out with our schedules.
It's a lot more fun to talk about up days, of course. A lot of what you said in your pregame there, it really does say a lot. So this whole bird flu situation, right? I thought maybe last week we had sort of put it to bed because we really didn't talk much about it. I didn't think the market talked about it a lot. We spent some time talking about Iran, Israel, all that other stuff. So it was kind of discouraging. It's making the news now. It was on the front page of the New York Times this morning, I understand. And it was also part of the CBS National News last night and this morning. If you listen carefully, it to me, it doesn't sound terribly inflammatory. They usually at the end of these programs or these articles, there is assurance that, hey, this milk has been pasteurized. That's why they do that, to kill the viruses and the germs and stuff in there. So it's safe to drink, and the meat is safe to eat. But obviously, after I was guilty of underreacting initially to COVID, and I think maybe more people were. And so, you're extra sensitized to, I better make sure that I really think about, could this really be that kind of a factor again? Now, I don't think it's anything like COVID. I'm not a scientist. I am a speculator, so I do understand that part where the speculator says, well, I don't know if I should be participating in a market that's this uncertain. So that's the rub. So at the end of the day, what do you do as an analyst? I can tell you what I do. Finally, I go like, well, I'm going to trust what I think I know. And what I think I know is that the available supply of cattle in the north is very short. This notion that we've got all these cattle placed in this wall of cattle to come in the first quarter of the year. Well, guess what? The first quarter of the year is behind us, and we killed 5% less cattle. So, are they all backed up and they weigh 2,000 pounds? No. Weights are big, but I mean, to me, it's more of a function of good weather that has increased the weights a little bit. But I don't know. To me, it was a day today where after we got through the first break and, worried about what the impact of the latest bird flu story was, then, of course, we were greatly impacted by a sharp sell-off here in the stock market. It's still lower, but what GDP, jobless claims, whatever, they didn't come out like they wanted them to, right? There's a report about every 15 minutes, it seems like, over there. And so we were, down a chunk, 700-800 on the Dow. And that, of course, seems like down days always seem to relate to the cattle market that way. So that was number one, bird flu, number two, stock market, and then cash is king was number three. So that was kind of fun to see how that worked out.
It's nice to be able to end that list with some good positive, and kind of give us your takeaway on this big jump that we saw in the cash. I mean, you talked about the north being short. They need the cattle.
And it was nice to see it proof in the pudding. Yesterday, the trade in the South was basically 182, which was steady, which I actually thought was a little bit encouraging, given the way the market was wobbling here and worried about everything. Then this morning, there was just a little bit of trade at 183 in Kansas. So that seemed to kind of like give everybody a little more of a swagger. We were getting bid 184 in the North. Now the quality of the cattle in the North, I think, commands a premium to the cattle in the South. And I also would submit that I think the overall supply of cattle in the North is less than what the crowd thought it was going to be. So, as I've said on here before, the beginning and end of all markets start in Iowa on the cattle. Sorry, don't take that as being cocky just because I'm from here, but I mean, it's the North because our supply is seasonal. It changes, or we're farmer feeders. So if we're a backlog, typically it's us because we have maybe a weakness of fighting the market, falling in love with your last set of calves, whatever it is. So there's that, but so we should be a premium, and we have been. So last week it was 184. I was encouraged by the resolve of the feedlots to say, no, we're going to ask higher. We don't think we think you need some cattle. And then for a little while today, I had 3 packers all trying to buy cattle at 85. Okay. Then I had 2 of those 3. Would you take 86? There's a few cattle moving at 86, but there's been a handful of cattle that's actually traded to a regional at 187. Pretty salty, 2 to 3 higher. How about that? So it's nice to see a fundamental thing that actually seemed like it was the right thing today. Said that. What I fret about is, and I can't prove this because there's no transparency, but as that blurb was coming out the other day, I think that there are algorithms that are built on headlines, that the certain phrases come together, that an algorithm, a computer, in other words, that's programmed to do that, will say beef and ban in the same sentence. Oh, we better sell 500 or 1,000. I can't prove all this, but that's how the market gushed there. And you're going, geez, what happened? In the old days when you had a pit, somebody would say, well, it sounds like Columbia's going to not let us sell beef to them. And they'd go, well, how much did they buy from us? Nothing. Okay, no big deal. Right. and we'd move on. But you're right. And that's a little lead into maybe what I should give my disclaimer a little bit here of, as tomorrow is Friday. Last time I checked, Fridays have been the difficult, because the long speculator goes, well, what's going to happen this weekend? Are we going to get some news out of Iran, Israel? Are we going to get some more news, breaking news, different news out of the bird flu thing? So tomorrow might be a little interesting. Don't be surprised if we give back a little bit of this big rally today. But the cash had a monster day, and that's got to help, especially when you're discounted as severely as we are here.
Yeah, we'll take that positive, hands down. Brad, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
kkbtrading.com, or the phone number is 712-722-0023.
All right, that is today's cattle call. Headlines and all that recycle themselves. A quick reminder, commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss, not suitable to all investors. That's this week's cattle call on the Rural Radio Network.